Good afternoon, Senators. Before we suspended for the break, we were at contributions on the veterinarian medicine bill, the local government bill. Sorry, that's what I was thinking about. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock. Good afternoon, Senate colleagues.
Good, sir.
Today I rise to make my contribution to the local government bill 2024. Mr. Vice President, just before I dive into the bill, I would like to join my colleagues in congratulating the former Commissioner of Police, the Commissioner of Police, as he is about to demit office, Mr. Clayton Fernando, on the service that he gave to our country, and also for the hard work and dedication that he committed. And I would also like to congratulate the incoming Shanta Knowles on being Shanta Knowles on being considered, or for being the first female Commissioner of Police incoming. That is to be commended, and I would like to just say to our Prime Minister that he is truly an inclusive Prime Minister, and we see it throughout the administration, time and time again, where young men and women are included in leadership roles in our country, and women are appointed in leadership roles in our country, and none other than as late as the appointment of Mrs. Shanta Knowles as the first female Commissioner of Police. I wouldn't go on to say that I don't know her like others, Mr. Vice President, as she has a long history in the Royal Bahamas Police Force, in many leadership roles in the force. So again, congratulations to her, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, the Local Government Act before us today, Mr. Vice President, is deserving of being debated in an atmosphere of unanimous national consensus, with an appreciation of the 51-year journey of nationhood and a review of the evolution of the Local Government Act as set out in the Act of 1996, which is being repealed. In short, both sides of this chamber should be excited and appreciative of our place and time in history in the further development and growth of our country. Mr. Vice President, I join all true nation builders in welcoming, as I said, Mr. Vice President, this debate. I also join all true nation builders in the demand and concern for our police institution, worthy of our respect and emulation. As one of our oldest institutions in our nation, the police force is stitched into our national psyche, and its excellence and virtue and sterling reputation will always be desired, demanded, and expected. Let the work and process begin. Let the nation learn from these experiences that we are the inheritors of this corner of islands, and these institutions which belong to us and are staffed and administrated by us will always have our support and encouragement to become even better at what they do. Let us never allow the noise in the market generated for pure political conjecture and partisanship cause us to relinquish any scintilla of our national sovereignty and independence. And let us also appreciate that certain circumstances are not peculiar to the Bahamas. And while we may pause for a minute in shock and anger, we have to always remember that the overwhelming majority of the Bahamians who wear the uniform are above reproach and perform under very trying and difficult circumstances. So let the word go forth to friends and foe alike that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, we, the inheritors of these islands, rocks and keys, will never allow the few bad players to disrupt and delay us on our national journey towards betterment for all of the Bahamian people. Mr. Vice President, we in this place do not practice or live in a vacuum. Every piece of legislation we debate in this place becomes malleable instruments for and from the vagaries of international affairs and circumstances. And indeed, just as importantly, what is happening at home in our own little Bahamas, Mr. Vice President. The local government bill before us today will not be immune. The issue of law and enforcement, peace and order, patriotism and national duty will come center stage. Caribbean politics is always a hotbed of emotions, a flurry of tempers, and an uncanny overdose of expectation, an urgency for politicians to be seen to be delivering to their base. We have seen this play out over the last 48 hours in a way which for some may seem to be disturbing. But when we take that slow walk through our nation's history, we soon recognize the familiar footpaths of divergence that are taken to achieve a political goal. The question, Mr. Vice President, will be, had another politician not upstage another politician in the official opposition planned news conference last week, would the suspicious reactions that took place in another place, outside and inside yesterday, have even occurred? In the literary classic, The Mimic Men by V.S. Naipaul, the distinguished Caribbean Nobel Prize honoree, we find so many instructive details and references to society in the former English colonies and the overindulgence of repetition in vain and inglorious attempts of mimic men to dare to walk in the shoes of struggles that are and will remain indelibly linked to an emergence, Mr. Vice President, from slavery and colonialism, and having had thrust upon us the burden of governing the new state. Here in our little Bahamas, just a few weeks away from celebrating the 58th anniversary of majority rule, it is boorish, Mr. Vice President, and absolutely worthy of condemnation of all well-thinking Bahamians that troubling events born out of political desperation, grandstanding, and sheer personal selfish political ambition can find its way into soiling our ancient parliamentary democracy. Mr. Vice President, the revisionists, the illusionists, the mimic men of which Naipaul wrote, were in full masquerade yesterday The conduct had a nary and a scintilla of anything even vaguely associated with the coming of age of history of this country. Rather, Mr. Vice President, I submit it was the sole personal act of desperation on one person wanting to outdo and outshine and outperform the embattled leader of the party opposite.
Point of order.
Senator Enfield, what is your point of order?
Imputations of improper motives.
What is the improper motive? He stated.
Remember, the members here are suggesting, this is the imputation, that somehow what happened in the House yesterday had something to do with the deputy and the leader of the Free National Movement.
That it had something to do with them?
Yeah, listen. If you listen to the imputation,
Yep.
that's why none of y'all in the chair and a sensible person in the chair who can listen. So y'all remain.
So speak to the chair. Speak to the chair.
So y'all remain.
What is the improper?
There's no. Firstly, he could not say what was in the mind of either Michael Pintard. He cannot say what was in the mind of Michael Pintard. No, but he doesn't have to call a name. He said the deputy and the leader.
Okay, so Senator,
and only one leader over there.
Senator, I'm trying to understand your point. What is the imputation of the improper motive?
He's suggesting that in the mind of Michael Pintard or Shannon Cartwright, there was some confusion. That they would no just listen to me that they are seeking to upstage each other, and I don't know how he could know that.
And the improper,
I don't know how he could know that if that's the improper motive.
So the improper motive is
he reading their minds.
The improper motive is he's reading their minds.
Yeah, and that they're seeking
that's
to
not a motive.
Each other. Now I know his speechwriter did a good job for him today, but he got to stay on point, man. You can't say
that's a separate issue. I still don't understand your point of what's the improper motive.
Imputing things to their minds on his feet in this place.
And what's improper? What's the improper part?
That they are in some at variance to each other.
Okay.
Okay? And he can't impute that. He cannot impute that unless he's one of them.
He's fetching.
So that isn't a breach of the exact rule that you.
Even if I repeat.
That isn't a breach of the rule that you stated. You didn't state an improper motive. Senator Pickstock, please carry on.
Improper imputations is Rule 14.
Correct, but you didn't state what an improper motive is.
Improper motive is that he is suggesting. Improper imputation is that he's suggesting. He knows what's in the mind of the leader.
What's
and
the improper part?
At variance between the two.
And it's improper.
Competition between the two. It's improper.
It's improper for him to suggest that.
We have one leader in the FNM, that's Michael Pintard.
Okay.
We have one deputy, that's Shannon Cartwright.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm not in agreement. Continue, Senator.
You wouldn't understand either.
Rather, Mr. Vice President, I submit.
Senator Pickstock has the floor again. Senator Young.
You wouldn't understand either.
Senator
It
Pickstock.
was the sole personal act of desperation on one person wanting to outdo, outshine, and outperform the leader of the party opposite.
Where you saw desperation yesterday? You saw
And within
everything
seconds.
under control.
Mr. Vice President, and within seconds, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Vice President, within seconds, Vice President,
Okay.
No, but he don't know that.
Senators.
You cannot say that.
The point has already been adjudicated. Senator Pickstock has the floor. Please allow him to continue his contribution. Senator Pickstock.
within seconds, Mr. Vice President, of the mace, the symbol of the Speaker's authority, being thrown out of the House, social media and the supporters of the perpetrator of the act went viral, demanding that the parliamentarian should now become the leader of the party opposite.
You're scared of Michael that much?
We in this place,
You're so scared of Michael Pintard.
we in this place,
That you here now, whole PLP Senator.
we in this
Whole
place
PLP Senator can waste time inside
are all very much aware. We in this place are all very much aware of those social media posts
I didn't know
and the
Michael
personal
Frank knew all
campaign for
I didn't know
the
Michael
leader
Frank knew all
opposite.
like that. I didn't know you Frank knew all like
Mr.
that.
Vice President, the selfishness and total disregard for the protection and almost sacred reverence to the original historic act of 1965 Mr. Vice President, this selfishness.
You know threat? Boy, that ain't what Cooper people saying. Yeah, them three people. Boy, Cooper Ryan ain't with you. All I can tell you.
Mr. Vice President.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, this selfishness and total disregard for the protection and almost sacred reverence to the original historic act of 1965 shows again how easy it is for a nation groping for identity to be trapped like mimic men, and thus erode the power of the pillars of the state and the fierce and bold and courageous position taken in 1965. Mr. Vice President, I say shame, Mr. Vice President. I say shame. And everyone in this place should say shame. The vicious infighting for the leadership of the party opposite. The FNM should never be used to damage. They should never be, the FNM should never be used to damage and to soil and to disrupt the history of struggle which took place and took us from slavery to emancipation, to majority rule, to independence. The mimic men, I call them, as Neopal exposed in his brilliant work, is a prophetic glimpse into how manipulative and destructive certain patterns and conduct can be to true national identity and nation building. Mr. Vice President, and therein lies the spectacular and disgusting irony of the party opposite. On social media, they promote their right to come to Parliament Square to demonstrate, a right guaranteed them under the Constitution. They list as their major grievance, that the democracy of this nation is in danger.
Under threat under the PLP.
The irony, Mr. Vice President.
Don't want the minority.
Here we go from the ridiculous to the sublime. The party opposite, which has served in government for a collective period of almost 20 years, with the 3 of those years in the 20th century and the majority in the 21st century, are alleging that the democracy is in peril. They must save it. But wait a minute.
Point of order. Sorry.
What is your point of order, Senator?
Mr. Vice President, I was trying to find the exact rule. I'm raising on a point of order on rule, well, part 20 of 31 on manner and contents of speeches. And I will read the rule. Any senator who desires to refer in debate in the Senate or in any committee to the character or conduct of any person in his official or public capacity shall deliver to the President written notice prior. Now,
whose
Mr.
conduct
Vice
is he
President
referring to?
Well, to the leader of the opposition, who is an official constitutional, so that is his actual official capacity. And so my question to you is whether or not he has indeed written to the President or to the Vice President in this instance in order to say that because that is the same rule in that other place that the Speaker leverages, and he is going on and on, not just about the character, but also their conduct just yesterday. And I'd like to know whether or not the Senator did indeed receive permission ahead of time, according to 20 of 31, because I'm to speak of their conduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So I'll say 2 things. 1, he did send an email indicating his desire to speak on the events of yesterday. 2, earlier today, a number of senators were already allowed to speak. And so in light of that, senators do have leeway to discuss. It has already been brought to the frame. So, is there another point of order?
Yes, Mr. Vice President.
What's the point of order?
I want to raise a point from the point you just made. He sent you an email.
Correct.
The rule requires that he sends you his message, his speech.
He sent
1
me
hour before we start. That is the rule. Do you have? Are you saying in this chair that you are in possession of that communication from this member?
He is in possession.
Is that what you're saying, Mr.
Right.
Because we can check the clicks unless you and him passing something privately.
So if you can have a seat, I'll respond to you.
Okay.
So I'll refer to this. The rule says that he shall deliver written prior notice of the proposed reference. written prior notice of the proposed reference, not the exact content, detail, or written speech. Secondly, it says that the chair in the discretion shall permit the reference. Additionally, others have already spoken on this very same topic, including members of your own caucus. And so it is already...
Today.
Senator Michael Barnett.
No member of my caucus spoke about any adherence between my leadership.
They spoke about the events of yesterday.
No member of my caucus spoke about any
Senators may speak on it from any angle, but they spoke about the events of yesterday.
I understand your predicament, right? I understand your predicament. But here's what the rules. Here's what the rule really says. That the rule really says that you should be in possession of his communication, which gives you an opportunity to approve it. If we can do it like this, I can send you an email and say I want to speak on something, and you can leave me alone. Because what is good for him is good for us.
Well, you just read him the rule, and he told
all right?
Okay.
What is good for him is good for us.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Your objection is noted, Senator. As I said before, senators have already discussed the matter in here, and it's already an open debate in this session, and it's only fair to allow those who haven't spoken yet to address the same matter. So please continue, Senator Pickstock.
Up here's another level. Don't sit down there. We will not impugn the character of a member.
Whatever.
That's what this fella doing. Sitting in here against the rules and impugning the members of parliament, the characters of the members of parliament. Just because some speechwriter sent it to.
Mr. Vice President, I say shame. And all of them.
Shame!
Say shame.
Shame on you!
Shame!
Shame on you, man!
Mr. Vice President, we are being told that the democracy is in peril. That the democracy is in peril.
You ain't just see it?
It is they who by their act, it is they who by their act disrupted the democracy by dismantling the authority of the Speaker with the removal of the mace, which disrupts the smooth flow of democracy and the work of the Parliament. Mr. Vice President, the neophytes and pseudo-scholars, I call them, who find the actions of the party opposite commendable are riding the tail
Mr.
of a
Vice
tiger.
President, that's improper language to use in Parliament. It's unparliamentary. Well, the man just called me a neophyte. And some other name.
That you don't know.
And some other name disgusting. That's unparliamentary to say about any member of Parliament. Right? Especially for someone who only been here 3 minutes.
Senator, I'll invite you to withdraw the comment of neophyte, and please speak in language that the regular lay senator.
No, I spent 4 years over there. No, if any neophyte here, that's it.
So, the senator has willingly withdrawn the reference to neophyte, and can you agree to speak in language that the lay senators can understand?
The public can understand.
Right thing.
Oh, you say you don't understand, so.
I didn't remember the last one.
Mr. Vice President, right-thinking and sensible Bahamians see right through this insane and selfish political act. Mr. Vice President, in December of 2001, while the party opposite sat in government, there was a similar incident of political grandstanding when other pretentious political players ran up the green carpet, handcuffed themselves to the mace. That crew? That crew, who by no surprise today are all together in the party opposite, said they were protesting the F&M government's determination to gerrymander boundaries for the 2002 general election. We all know how that ended. We all know how the F&M in government reacted to that act of grandstanding. The question for us in this place today is what has happened to the party opposite in those 23 years? 23 years later, what has happened to the party opposite? They are mimic men, repeating a worn-out formula, which the Bahamian people will find laughable and most.
Sorry, one moment, Senator.
Parliamentary language for this man, this member, this honorable senator, to refer to the opposition as mimic man. in such a derogatory fashion.
It's not
In such a
derogatory.
derogatory fashion. And said with such venom by an undemocratic member who refuses to speak to the relevance, the bill at hand is a local government bill.
I started. I'll tie it in.
This
Give me
member
a
has
chance.
been speaking for the last half an hour
Yeah.
out of relevance.
This is my time.
No relevance. No relevance.
I'll get there.
And he's unparliamentary.
Senator,
It's unparliamentary, man. And the way that he
Copycat. Yeah.
would you like to be called a copycat?
You know, Mr. Vice President,
Senator,
I've heard some comments
please continue.
about the toughness of the protocols and proceedings
Sorry,
in the
let
other place.
I don't consider copycat or mimicry to be objectionable, although it may not be favorable to whoever who's being described. But please do bring your speech to relevance on the act.
Maybe a short walk through memory lane will be instructive. The party in government today sat through 4.5 years with a speaker appointed by the FNM in government who used his bully pulpit to personally visit the vilest and most unparliamentary diatribe and abuse on not just the PLP members in opposition, but their wives, their children, their parents, their friends, and might I also
One moment.
that the
One moment. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Barnett Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is the reference to the former Speaker of the House of Assembly. You had indicated earlier that the senator gave you notice that he was going to speak on yesterday's events.
Correct.
The former speaker had nothing to do with yesterday's events. And you also indicated to him to get to relevance, and he is continuing.
And you stood up less than 45 seconds after that.
Because when you said, Mr. Speaker, when you said relevance, he then should have moved to local government.
I asked him to get to relevance.
You refuse to be an impartial adjudicator.
I was just about to say, you're supposed to be the chair.
You refuse to be an impartial adjudicator.
Thank you. I take note of your point of order. You have a second one?
No, I'm just going back to my first point was that the former speaker has nothing to do with yesterday, and you indicated that he indicated to you that he would speak to yesterday.
This is in the public domain.
No.
Correct. Senator, please
man.
do bring your contribution to relevance, and senators, please allow him an opportunity to do so.
No, we can't allow foolishness.
I did not even register
That's nonsense.
Let's go back down memory lane.
That's nonsense.
on the PLP to cower behind a selfless and destructive act such as tampering with the mace. Mr. Vice President, in 2010, thereabouts, there was a police shooting of a young man in the inner city. People were incensed and wanted answers. The PLP member of parliament for the Angliston constituency attempted to move the agenda of the place opposite at their immediate sitting to discuss this troubling national issue. Another FNM speaker denied the request. When the member of Angliston continued on her feet, the FNM speaker named her, and under parliamentary rules, the Sergeant of Arms was instructed to remove her body from the parliament. PLP MPs surrounded her in a protective chain, and the House was suspended to restore order. At no time did the PLP claim that the democracy was under threat. And at no time did the FNM speaker have to run for safety because a member wanted to show off, be a grand
Just speaker can't run. That was unparliamentary. I hit my seat, man.
prima donna.
I said she can't run. I said she can't run. I don't think she can run.
That's unparliamentary.
My opinion is she can't run. She can't run.
Continue, Senator Bigstock.
Playing around with history. And what responsible leadership of the FNM, yes, responsible leadership of the party opposite once maintained.
She even didn't try to run.
Let it not be forgotten that it was the FNM Prime Minister who introduced the concept of January 10th, 1967. Let us not forget that it was the FNM Prime Minister who introduced the concept of January 10th, 1967, majority rule, becoming a national holiday. Yes, it took a PLP government to bring the legislation, but the FNM put it on the runway. Here we are today, where we are supposed to be immersed in this bold new local government legislation, where the Family Islands have been given such an aggressive and ambitious range of powers and duties to advance their communities. And we have to wipe off pigeon dropping of a dubious and pretentious act yesterday, which leaves unsettled and seeks to belittle one of the greatest political acts towards freedom, self-expression, and national independence. And all of this happened, Mr. Vice President, in my submission, because one person wanted to upstage his leader and steal the newspaper headlines and have
I again rise on a point of order of improper imputations. And I rise and I sit. I rise and I sit.
Senator, please bring your speech to relevance.
That the former Prime Minister and leader of the FNM was absent during this sad blight on the history of a political party whose founding leaders was national chairman of the then opposition PLP, when the historic mace was legitimately returned to the Bahamian people. Mr. Vice President, the mimic men needed to be reminded that one, January 23, the 23rd of January, 1956, the date of Etienne Dupuche's parliamentary resolution dismantling racial discrimination in the colony of the Bahamas cannot be restaged. Mr. Vice President, April 27, 1965, when, to bring attention to the stark boundary gerrymandering proposed by the minority government to cheat at the general election, the mace, the symbol of authority of the House, and the hourglass found their way to the people below, cannot be restaged and or redone. It belongs to the ages and the men and women of that struggle. In January 10th,
Michael Barnett Ellis, is it the same point of order?
But, Mr. Vice President, the chair has on 3 occasions asked the member to bring it to relevance. And I think it is unparliamentary for the member to continue to ignore the direction of the chair.
Thank you.
I just said local government. Yes, I did. If that's
Senator,
not my time, I said local government.
But before you continue the text of your speech, just tie in for us the historical reference to what we debate today. Just simply tie the two in for us.
No reason to talk.
He did say local government. See, he said it. And then we keep going with whatever he's talking about.
Mr. Vice President,
I hear it.
I'll be coming to relevance in a second. The internal fighting and struggles in a political party have no place in the affairs of the legislature.
Sorry, Senator. Please, sorry, I'm speaking to him.
Okay.
Please, for the sake of the Senate, before you continue, simply tie in your references, your historical references to what we debate today, so that we can see the reference.
So you now have officially entered the arena.
So, Senator, we've
This is farcical. I've never seen.
Is there a point of order?
The point of order is, my lord, you cannot debate from where you sit.
Okay, I'm not debating. I am asking him to bring.
No, you're telling him how to continue on with the rubbish that he's preaching in here. That's what you're doing, and it's wrong. Ought not do it.
Listen, the mace was thrown.
Hold on, no. Hey, Senator.
It's a sad day in in our democracy.
Senator Pickstock.
Take a seat.
Senator Pickstock.
When you want to say what you want to say, you say it.
Senator Pickstock, address the chair, please.
Mr. Vice President, we are moving away from local government.
Please
as a
move
volunteer
on.
service and providing the framework for remuneration. We are accentuating the national government subvention and giving local government an additional legislative power to raise money within their district for their public projects. Madam President, Mr. Vice President, let me be the first to say that with this new local government, this new revolution in local government, must also come a new mindset of spectacular service and honesty and transparency for those Bahamians who are elected or appointed to serve in these capacities. We must arrive at a point in our development where the ancient concept and colonial construct of the Family Island Commissioner is a relic of a bygone era. We must ensure that the fresh wind of progress ushered in by the Local Government Bill 2024 remains untainted by the divisive forces of partisan politics. Every Bahamian and resident covered under this legislation deserves a fair hearing, a fair chance, and equal opportunities. Local government under a PLP-led administration must never be seen as a privilege reserved for PLP supporters or as a tool for those aligned with the government to claim an unfair advantage in the process. For this act to work and to be seen to be working effectively, there must be transparency, Mr. Vice President. It is critical for we in this place to caution against polarization and political misbehavior or kisses go by favor. Mr. Vice President, I remind those murmuring in the background that ours is a system of collective responsibility, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I now digress to conclude and wrap up my contribution. Mr. Vice President, the internal fighting and struggles in the political party have no place in this legislature.
Point of order. Imputations. Unless this member could prove that there's some internal fighting in the FNM.
He hasn't said which party or anything yet. He hasn't said anything yet.
Thank you very much.
Nobody's been on all day here.
You just went on a tirade of not mind reading.
Unless the man could prove that there's infighting more than there is in the PLP between Chester Cooper and Brave Davis.
So that's what you wanted to get on the record. Thank you for your point of order. He hasn't said anything yet.
Just last week, we witnessed the hapless leader of the official opposition bombarded and pummeled by the vicious political insults and taunts in the opposition committee room of the other place. The leader of the opposition was surrounded by his very own colleagues. Mr. Vice President, if one was to go back and look at the embarrassing exchange that took place and see how the leader of the opposition was not defended or protected by his own colleagues against his vicious assault, one would begin to see and begin to understand the mace theatrics. Mike, they don't have your back. Et tu, Brutus. Mr. Vice President, we have to build together. We have to protect and defend together. The fierce urgency of the party opposite to return to power with no apology or confession for why they were ceremoniously voted out of office less than 3 years ago, and its internal leadership struggles should not be used to create political cynicism and to destroy our brand internationally. I ask the question, after you have sent out thousands of those distortions and untruths to the world on allegations, and you want the world to see the Bahamas in a negative light, how do you propose to ever fix that and correct that? You know, Mr. Vice President, there was this meme floating around on social media on the weekend, which alleged all kinds of malfeasance in the Bahamas. That meme said the Scotland Yard have come to repair and fix what they said is wrong in our nation. The meme showed skylines that are not the Bahamas. The meme showed people and activities that are not Bahamians. The meme made ridiculous and unfounded, scurrilous allegations about the Bahamas. Yet, the party opposite did not come to Bay Street and Parliament Square to protest the international distortions and lies that some would wish to visit on our country and our fragile tourism industry. Rather, they chose to ignore these memes because any black eye on the country while they are out of power is a plus for them. Mr. Vice President, as I wrap up, as I conclude, Mr. Vice President, as I conclude,
This is a sad day in the Senate.
As I conclude, Mr. Vice President,
Sad day in the Senate.
I support the local government bill of 2024. Mr. Vice President, as I conclude, I support the local government bill of 2024, and I would urge all of my Senate colleagues to support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Job well done. Job well done. Well done. Good.
I didn't know you could go lower, but you ran lower than I thought you could go.
Good stuff.
Well, you got the right man in the chair. Got the right man in the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As I say a few words in wrapping up the bill, I want to thank all senators for their contributions to the bill. I want to just reference a few points raised by senators. In seconding the bill, Senator Russell raised the issue of contract workers and their desire to become permanent and pensionable employees. A related point was raised by Senator Henfield. A related point was raised and a related point was raised by Senator Henfield in relation to individuals who had worked for long years for the district councils, and many of whom have retired without any pension benefit. I can inform the Senate that there has been established a subcommittee of the Cabinet to deal with this issue of the various terms used to describe such workers in such circumstances, including weekly workers or some other terms, and those are workers who have either been hired by school boards, local government, I think the library is airports, and they fall into this sort of, I would describe as a no man's land, where many of whom work for many years, and some have retired without as much as $1 in terms of pension benefit. And we have established a committee consisting of the Minister of Public Service, Minister of Education, myself, and a few other ministers to look into this issue with a view to moving quickly to regularize those workers. We want to do so, Mr. Chairman, in conjunction or in sync with our intents to reform the public pension legislation that we are finalizing right now, where we are seeking to establish a fund and eventually move away from paying as you go, but actually establish a fund. We want to do it in conjunction so that we are able to capture all of these people. And so there's something that we recognize is a problem. The fact of the matter is, if these people work for, and I don't want to say these people, but these workers, these individuals who work for local government or the school board or the library or wherever, they in fact, they go to work every day with the belief that they work for government. Yes. And so it is a travesty that many of them are, without benefit, and many have gone home without pension. Many have passed without that benefit, and that is something that we recognize is an injustice, and we're looking to correct. Senator Ellis raised the issue of district councils being able to keep some of the funds that are raised in the district in terms of real property tax, as an example that the senator raised. And there are provisions in the bill for first of all, there's a collection of the funds, go to the consolidated fund, and there's provision for rebate of up to 100% of the funds. I think the point might have been just leave them there without it coming to Nassau and then going back. One step at a time. But I think we hear as well the point by Senator Henfield. And in fact, we had at some point, the issue of working with the local government in order to be able to more effectively collect the real property tax. And we had a pilot program with one of the districts where it was an agreement that with assistance from that local government council, a certain percentage of the real property tax will be rebated. That was in a previous administration. I think that sort of might have not been continued, and then you have different events that cause it not to happen, not to continue. But again, that sort of thing is contemplated in this legislation, albeit funds are collected, put into the fund, and then accounted for, and a percentage up to 100% going back to the local government districts. Senator Henfield raised a related point about fees that may be charged for the use of public facilities, and we understand that it is our culture that fees are not normally charged unless it's a commercial undertaking like a cookout or something of that nature. Bahamians are used to being able to go and enjoy their beach, enjoy their park without fee, and so we take the point that we need, and this might need to look at how we subsidize the local governments in doing the upkeep so that they can keep those fees at a minimum, and so it's not that you have your locals having to pay to go and use the facilities, or having to pay more than just a nominal fee, for example, to upkeep bathroom facilities, etc. The related point was we have beaches and parks, roadside contracts here in New Providence. That's not enjoyed in the Family Islands, and I can tell you that that matter has come up many times in caucus, and I think we'll eventually have to address it. It's come up in our political caucus where, Family Island representatives look at it saying, we need to have something because it incentivizes cleanliness and keeping the area well maintained. And then we take the point of the cleaning of the road. I've made a note of it here in Abaco in particular. The other point I want to address, Mr. Chairman, is the point about that Senator Henfield raised about the issue of business licenses being issued and perhaps in Nassau, and then the people in the islands find out about it later. I know, and this is something that we have to look at. I know it happens here in New Providence as well. I think in the old days, you would do a application for a business license, and then there was an opportunity for the community to come and have a comment on it. Unfortunately, I think that in some of the amendments throughout the years, that fell away. And so you end up with things like, I think someone commented that, you can be an island, and the next thing, liquor store open opposite the church. Or here in New Providence, opposite the school. Or if you go into some of our heartland communities, boom, 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 liquor store, liquor store, liquor store, liquor store, which just contributes to the, the deterioration of these communities and proliferation, et cetera. And so I think that's something we definitely need to look in the Family Islands, but as well as in New Providence, so that we can have a better planning. Because we see it particularly, I often make the comment when you go over the hill and you go into areas like, for example, St. Barnabas, where you see bars and bars, and sometimes a whole street just filled with bars. And you have to balance that, Mr. Chairman, with individuals who want to be entrepreneurs, but then we also have to balance that with your social, societal well-being, Mr. Vice President. I want to make two more points, Madam President, Mr. Chairman, and it's related to some of the discussion that happened in relation to activities that happened in another place yesterday. In the aftermath, the leader of the opposition was on Zhivago Lang show, Z Live. And he had a long interview, about an hour long, and I listened to the whole, just about the whole thing. It was more than an hour. But he made the point, and I wanted to say something about it today. He made the point that when he was criticizing, as the side opposite does, our revenue collection efforts and some of the mistakes that happened where we had, armed people and photographs taken of that, which is not our intention. But he made the point that there were people who had come to him. I think he made a general point where he said that DIR is targeting F&M businesses. Yeah. And then he made the more fine point that some people have come to him and said that they believe that because they are such vocal supporters of the F&M, the DIR has been targeting them for collection. And I just want to say categorically that is not the case. That is not the case just to the public and to the business community. I know, like I said, he refined it saying that some people reported it to him, but I just want to say that to the public. As long as this member is not this member, but as long as this minister has anything to do with it, as long as, and I can speak for the Prime Minister, there's no political targeting or anything of that sort. As a matter of fact, I got a call from a PLP stalwart the other day saying that VIR has been very aggressive, and he said to me, he says, those people in those offices need to know what other people did back in the old days to enable them to sit in the office. And it was reported to him. So I did say, he said he made a fine point. And so I wanted to say that there's absolutely no political consideration when it comes to the actions of the DIR. You know, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, no. He said some people reported to him, and that's the way they felt. So I just. So no, I just want to make that assurance and to assure the public that absolutely not, Mr. Chairman. All efforts are across the board. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to end. I know a lot of members referenced the yeah. I wanted to just reference the events that happened yesterday. A number of senators had mentioned, some of the events that went on in the other place. And we're talking about democracy. And even in this debate itself, we're talking about democracy and so many of us, some of us have given service in that other place in furtherance of democracy. Mr. Chairman. And we are mindful. We're mindful, Mr. Chairman, that there are many elements. And as we speak about local government and its role in fostering democracy. We have the other place, and we have us here. We also have other pillars in our society that support democracy, Mr. Chairman. I want to, including the press, Madam President, and the press is an observer of things that happen. And I looked in the paper today, and I want to share a bit of this this editorial from the Nassau Guardian.
Which paper?
The Nassau Guardian. And Mr. Chairman, I should say that I'm sure each one of us in here thanks our family for the support that they give us, yes, and the advice that they give us. You know, the family who support us in these endeavors.
Good times and the bad.
And I want to read from this editorial, and I'll adopt the words as my own. No, I'll adopt the words as my own because they speak to. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm just saying our families. In order for us to serve in these places, we need to lean on the support and the encouragement and sometimes the criticism and the words that our family says to support us. It's very important. I want to read this editorial, and I'll adopt it as my own, and I'll table it too, Mr. Chairman. It says, the FNM mocks history. Free National Movement members of the House of Assembly yesterday made a mockery of history and themselves with sideshow antics at a time when the nation is dealing with a very serious crisis within the Royal Bahamas Police Force. FNM Deputy Leader Shannon Cartwright hurled a mace out of the House of Assembly's window after FNM leader Michael Pintard, who represents Marco City, was not allowed to speak in the House of Assembly at the moment he wanted to. Pintard was petitioning the Speaker for an opportunity to address the controversy surrounding the allegations in a U.S. indictment that members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force were involved in drug and arms trafficking. However, House Speaker Patricia DeVoe denied his request, explaining that they had not yet come to the relevant point in the order of business of the House for his request to be considered. Cartwright stood and shouted, "Let the people speak," moments before he marched to the Speaker's table, grabbed the mace, and threw it out after several attempts to ram the window open. Remove the honourable member for St. Barnabas from these proceedings, the Speaker demanded. The move came after Prime Minister Philip Davis finished communicating that he accepted the resignation of the Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernando following the indictment bombshell. The case has scandalized the force even further after another senior officer was placed on garden leave after allegedly colluding with armed robbers and murderers. The Prime Minister made the announcement during the portion of the House agenda for ministers to make communications. This latest scandal prompted a message from the Office of the Prime Minister, 2 addresses in the House of Assembly by the Prime Minister, and the assurance of the establishment of a commission to investigate law enforcement agencies. It was shortly before the Minister of National Security, Wayne Monroe, began to give a communication on the tabling of legislation to establish that commission that Pintard demanded to speak. He, in fact, wished to speak about the very same issue that was being addressed by the ministers. That is fine, but Pintard knows that the House has rules and that the order of the House must be followed before the Speaker can entertain any request for him to speak. Pintard is a playwright, and clearly the stage was set yesterday. Outside the House, the FNM had already organized a protest because Pintard was not allowed to speak last week. It appeared planned that Cartwright dashed for the mace. After DeVoe ordered the police remove Cartwright from the House, he resisted, and members of the opposition rushed to actually grapple with the police to prevent them removing him. They were all dragged out of the House by police as they resisted in a shameful display. Members of the very same police force Pintard wanted to speak about. That they would act so nonsensically because they believe it was so important that Pintard be heard when he insisted he must be heard despite the rules of the House raises questions about the judgment and fitness of the leadership of the FNM. And what Cartwright did is an insult when given the historical context of the mace being thrown out of the window of the House of Assembly. On April 27, 1965, the late Sir Lyndon Pinling, the then leader of the opposition Progressive Liberal Party, threw the Speaker's mace from the window of the House to protest the gerrymandering of the boundaries by the then governing UBP. The PLP planned the move to coincide with a demonstration it was having outside the House. However, it was done because the UBP would not allow the PLP to make amendments to the boundaries draft order for the 1967 election. The PLP won the popular vote in 1962, but lost when it came to seats in the House because the boundaries were gerrymandered to give more representation to the then Out Islands than to Providence, where the majority of the population lived. The PLP knew that the business of the House could not continue without the presence of the mace. The move resulted in Pinling becoming even more popular, and ultimately the PLP became the government after 2 other members of Parliament sided with them following the January 10, 1967 election. The difference between what Pinland did and what Cartwright did is that the PLP had an actual cause and a movement that would forever change the country. However, what Cartwright did was a stunt wrapped around Pintard's ego. It might score the FNM a little political energy, but there was no honor in it. In fairness, Mr. Speaker, I read the editorial. There are two letters to the editor on the front page, but one is with a false name, and I don't think we should read that in here, and the other is a regular contributor. But I say that to say, Mr. Chairman, I think that's fair commentary on what happened yesterday, and I'll leave it like that. And I think what we resolve to do is going forward.
You have the table?
Yes. History will judge.
We all adopted as our own. All of us adopted.
With that, Madam, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a suitable point to conclude the second reading and committal of a bill for an act. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act. As many are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is carried. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act.
Further second reading of bills.
No, man, all the red meat finished for the day.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
I want to thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. I want to thank my colleagues before me on the prior bill for giving a vibrant and truthful debate, especially those that clarify so succinctly the activities that happened in that other place yesterday. And they did such a good job that I'm going to leave the red meat alone today. Today I rise for the second reading of the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024. This bill is an important piece of legislation that seeks to create a comprehensive regulatory regime for the practice of veterinary medicine in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This bill, when enacted, will repeal and replace the Veterinary Surgeons Act, enacted in 1966, which currently provides for the registration of persons qualified to practice veterinary surgery and the regulation of that practice. Imagine that, Mr. Chairman. Imagine that. A medical profession in this country whose regulatory regime is from 1966. Imagine what has changed in the practice of medicine since 1966. This is a piece of legislation that is desperately needed for the profession. I want to thank the Veterinary Medical Association for their hard work and commitment and their work with government on this piece of legislation. And I want to recognize one veterinarian in particular who worked tirelessly for the last couple years to advance this, Dr. Val Grant, for his diligence and his perseverance in getting this done. Mr. Chair, this bill seeks to create a comprehensive regulatory regime for the practice of veterinary medicine in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It addresses critical areas such as the licensing of veterinarians, the establishment of professional standards, the regulation of the practices, and the establishment of a veterinary council, and the appointment of a registrar. The aim of this bill is to ensure that the practice of veterinarian medicine remains effective, responsible, and aligned with modern scientific achievements. The enactment of this legislation will create the Bahamas Veterinary Council, and the council will consist of 9 persons, including the Director of Veterinarian Services, 2 veterinarians registered under the Act in the public service, 4 veterinarians registered and nominated by the Veterinarian Medical Association, and 1 veterinarian paraprofessionals. Those are the veterinarian technicians, and then 1 other person. Section 6 of the bill sets out the functions of the council, and these functions are numerous. But important functions include the setting of the standards and the qualifications for the licensing of the vets, regulation of the standard of practice, and overseeing programs to improve the standard of veterinarian practice, including continuing education. The bill gives the minister the responsibility of appointing a registered veterinarian as the registrar and a secretary of the council. The Bahamas Veterinarian Council will have the power to appoint inspectors who ensure that persons practicing veterinarian medicine are doing it in accordance with the legislation and good practice. Section 13 of the bill gives these inspectors the power to enter veterinarian practices accompanied by police officers to carry out inspections that are prescribed by the bill. Section 13(4) ensures that that inspector carrying out his duties cannot be obstructed from ensuring that the terms of the bill are complied with. Mr. Chairman, the bill sets out the qualifications for the registration in Section 15. A person is qualified as a veterinarian if 1, he is a legal resident of the Bahamas, 2, he holds a degree in veterinary medicine from a university accredited in the Bahamas, and thirdly, he is a member of the Veterinarian Medical Association of the Bahamas. Medical professionals duly registered with the Bahamas Veterinary Council must swear and affirm an oath that is listed in the bill. With respect to the veterinarian paraprofessionals, or the vet technicians, Section 20 states that a person qualified for registration as a paraprofessional can be a person legally resident in the Bahamas and successfully completed a bachelor's degree in veterinary and health science, nursing, animal health science, or veterinary technology, and a post-secondary training course of 2 years or more in veterinary and health science. The council is responsible for investigations and complaints, and the council is given the power to cause for there to be an inquiry, whether on its own motion or because there is a complaint lodged against a registered veterinarian. The committee of 3 council members, as delegated by the chairman, presides over this inquiry. So it's a quasi-judicial function. The Bahamas Veterinary Council is empowered to impose discipline as necessary against registered persons who are found to be in contravention of the Act. And Section 36(2) prescribes various ways in which the council can impose disciplinary measures. Mr. Chair, this is progressive legislation for the regulation of the veterinarian industry that was drafted and vetted along with the private sector represented by the Veterinarian Medical Association. The Minister of Agriculture, Minister Jomo Campbell, should be commended on the work on this piece of legislation. Mr. Chair, I want to take some time today to speak about animal welfare in the Bahamas. Mahatma Gandhi said, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the ways that animals are treated." Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, based upon how we treat our animals in the Bahamas, the moral progress of our country is severely lacking. Immanuel Kant said, and I quote, "He who is cruel to animals becomes hard also in the dealings with men. We can judge the heart of a man by his treatment of animals." Mr. Chair, we must do better as a country on how we treat our animals, how we express our empathy, and how we go about the condemnation of animal abuse. Mr. Chair, studies will indicate, especially with respect to children, how they treat the animals is indicative on how they will treat their common man as they get older. And it is the firm belief that when you see violence in children aimed at animals, you can predict that it is more than likely that that child will demonstrate instances of violence as they grow older. Mr. Chair, there are few in the minority in the Bahamas that dedicate themselves and are committed to the well-being of the animals of our country. There are organizations, Mr. Chair, in this country who likewise dedicate themselves and their missions to the well-being of our animals. These include the Bahamas Alliance for Animal Rights and Kindness, otherwise known as BARC, the Bahamas Humane Society, Potcake Puppy Palace, Pink Potcake, and Potcakes in Paradise, Mr. Chair, otherwise known as PIP. I want to thank all of those involved with these and other animal welfare organizations and all of those who give their time, their effort, their tears, and their commitment every day for the cause of animal welfare in this country. Mr. Chair, I would like to speak on certain animal-related legislative and operational reforms that, in my view, are required for the betterment of our animals in this country. Some of these reforms, Mr. Chair, are merely a function of better enforcement because the law is already on the books. Some of these examples include, for instance, the enforcement of breeding requirements and the stopping of backyard breeding of animals in this country. Yes, the pit bulls and the pit bull mixed breeds. But over years, Senator, this has been something of different breeds. We had German Shepherds. For a time, every potcake looked like had a German Shepherd with the pointed nose. Now we have pit bulls. It's gone with breeds after breeds, but the problem is the same. We have unregulated backyard breeding of animals in this country. The Animal Protection and Control Act requires that any animal holding establishment, which includes a private dwelling unit under the law, so your home, so if you are breeding your animal in your home, you are caught by this provision. Any animal holding establishment used for breeding must have a certificate, so you must be licensed, and subject to inspection and enforcement of your premises. We know, Mr. Chair, this is absolutely not enforced in this country. Not at all is this enforced in this country. And the prevalence of backyard breeding establishments outside of the law is a single cause for the overpopulation problem in this country and the abuse and the treatment of animals in this country. I want to encourage the Department of Agriculture and the police force, both who know of this provision, both who know what they have to do, to actually do it, Mr. Chair, to enforce the breeding laws and issue the requisite fines and penalties for the violation of the laws with respect to the illegal breeding of animals and particularly dogs in this country, Mr. Chair. The second point I want to raise is the enforcement of animal abuse matters. Section 46 of the Animal Protection and Control Act provides for the offense of a cruelty to animals. The level of animal abuse, neglect, and cruelty in this country is truly sickening, Mr. Chair. I see the level of disregard for these living beings every single day. I live in a household, Mr. Chair, where the level of empathy for these neglected and abused living beings is unmatched in this entire country. I could say that unequivocally. I have abused animals at my house every single day of the year, where we rescue them, we rehabilitate them, we get them healthy, and we find good homes for them. But the abuse must end. It cannot be a perpetual hamster wheel of animal cruelty in this country, Mr. Chair. We must do more, and we must enforce our laws better. We must ensure that adequate penalties, convictions, and the enforcement of the law is the norm and not the exception in this country. And I call on the police force and other enforcement agencies in this country to take animal cruelty more seriously. Take it more seriously. If you can knowingly harm, torture, or starve a living being, that is most likely an indication of your conduct to your fellow man. Absolutely. I would also like to propose a further amendment to our animal laws, and particularly to the Animal Protection and Control Act. And I hope my good friend, and I can call him my junior, Minister Jomo Campbell, Minister of Agriculture, is listening. I propose mandatory spay and neuter if you don't have a breeding license. Mandatory. If you're to own an animal, it's mandatory that it's spayed or neutered, or you get a breeding license, and you subject yourself to the requirements of the law as a breeder. The reckless disregard for the overpopulation and breeding of animals in the Bahamas must come to an end. Yes. Overpopulation, Mr. Chair, leads to suffering, it leads to starvation, and ultimately it leads to animal abuse. I want to propose that if you are not a licensed breeder, that we have mandatory spay and neuter laws in the Bahamas. The reality is, Bahamians, by and large, have not been able to demonstrate themselves as responsible animal owners and caretakers. By and large. Backyard breeding and overpopulation is the single most important animal welfare issue in the Bahamas today. And frankly, it's a societal blight on our country. I would like to see these mandatory spay and neuter laws enacted with stiff penalties for breaches. Mr. Chair, I want to take this opportunity to speak about an organization that I work very close with in animal welfare. The Bahamas Alliance for Animal Rights and Kindness, or BARC.
How close?
Very close. BARC's mission is to carry out spay and neuter and education projects to reduce the homeless animal population and end the suffering of dogs and cats in the Bahamas. Spay and neutering leads to a happier and healthier animal population in this country. It's a proven fact. Spay and neutering animals is the right thing to do. It comes down to if you love animals, it's the right thing to do. And if you don't like animals, spaying, neutering is the right thing to do. And BARC is here to provide free F-R-E-E. Free spay and neuter surgeries in the Bahamas year-round. Year-round. On the islands. In fact, after Dorian, we were there and we rescued about 350 animals that were owned, wandering the streets because their households were destroyed. Animals that were tied up to trees. I don't know how they survived the floods. We flew them all back to Nassau, rehabilitated all of them, found homes or reunited them with their owners. In fact, we have a mobile spay and neuter clinic with a full-time vet where we move the clinic throughout the islands, a surgery station on wheels. So I want to just give you a few examples of the impact that BARC is having throughout our country. Since 2011, Mr. Chair, BARC has provided more than 33,000 free spay and neuter surgeries. So far in 2024, Mr. Chair, BARC has done 5,378 free spays and neuters this year alone. BARC just concluded an Eleuthera spay and neuter visit where we did 625 free spay and neuter surgeries in Eleuthera, from the north to the south, from Current all the way to Greencastle. BARC helped coordinate Operation Potcake earlier this year, where we did an additional, this is in addition to the BARC numbers, 2,215 free spays and neuters conducted over 8 days in 5 different locations in Nassau. Mr. Chair, I'm proud to be affiliated with the institution of BARC and give back to communities across the Bahamas in helping care for the animals. You should see me, Darren. I'm the master trapper. I go out and I'm the collector. I'm the one on the streets. I trap them, I catch them. I come back, 16, 17 animals on the truck at a time, into the communities.
One day.
That's my job. One trip.
One trip.
One trip. We do about, in Eleuthera, we did about 75 surgeries per day. Per day. One vet per day. Which means that for the most part, we had to go collect the animals, bring them back, do the surgeries, rehabilitate them, and return the animals. Wow. That's what we do. We keep them, with the surgeries we do now, because we now have a specialty surgery van, we keep them maybe 3 or 4 hours after the surgery. Now, if they're done in the afternoon, we'll hold them overnight. But if they're done in the morning, they'll be home by that afternoon. Wow. All their shots, they get all of their shots, they get all of their heartworm treatment, they get all of their flea and tick meds, and they get returned to their owners. So I want to personally commend all of the volunteers, the veterinarian and the staff, supporters and the donors. This is a not-for-profit. This is done strictly on donations and volunteerism. Strictly on donations and volunteer. In fact, we just had our annual golf tournament last week at Bahamar, and I want to thank Bahamar for donating the golf course and facilitating the golf tournament. One of our key fundraising efforts. We have Potcake Triathlon, where we host a triathlon at Jaws Beach. Another one of our key fundraising efforts. We do a lot, but we need to rely on the donors and the support that is out there.
His bark is because his bite.
This is a true community volunteerism not-for-profit that has grown to a level where it is probably the largest animal welfare charity in the country. Before I close, Mr. Chair, I do want to recognize and I want to speak to the tremendous commitment of animal welfare and empathy expressed to living beings by Alyssa McComb. Alyssa is my wife, who I truly love very much. Alyssa is the co-founder of BARC, living a life for other living beings every single day with empathy that I cannot describe, Mr. Chair. If others in the Bahamas had just a fraction of the compassion for animals that she has on a daily basis in her life, we would truly live up to the words of Mahatma Gandhi when he said, as I started, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Licit demonstrates the proper moral progress that I yearn for myself, for the society in which I live, for the country in which I live when it comes to the animals of our country. I want to thank you, honey. You do a tremendous job, and I love you very much.
Oh, yes, yes.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for these remarks. I want to thank my colleagues. I know you guys were scheduled to debate this bill a couple of times in my absence. And it's important that I had the opportunity to contribute to this, personally.
Happy we did. It was great.
And so I want to thank my colleagues for allowing us to debate it when I'm here. I want to congratulate the Minister of Agriculture. I want to congratulate the Veterinarian Medical Association advancing this piece of legislation. I want to recognize all of those across the country. And internationally, we have a lot of international support as well, who work and donate and volunteer to advance animal welfare in this country and to advance the civil treatment of animals. And these, as I said, are mostly volunteers. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move for the second reading of the Veterinarian Medical Bill 2024. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Tyrell Young.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I am so thankful that we have the God that we have. He is truly a God of mercy and forgiveness. And, Mr. Vice President, what hit home for me yesterday, just yesterday, more than ever before, God creates a new day for a good reason. Every day, He creates a new day to give us, His children, a new beginning and a new opportunity to do what is right, and also an opportunity to ask for forgiveness for what wrongs we have done, Mr. Vice President. With that being said, Mr. Vice President, today is an opportunity for the FNM to ask for forgiveness from the Bahamian people for the pre-rehearsed performance of Circus Act that they did yesterday in that honorable house, embarrassing the entire Bahamas, not just nationally, Mr. Vice President, but internationally. And even more devastatingly, Mr. Vice President, that act, to me, was the worst act ever written. I also want to say thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Philip Brave Davis, for living up to his name and continuing to be brave, and also for his continued support and belief in me to sit in this House, in this Senate. Mr. Vice President, on to the order of the day. The protection of animals in our society is of paramount importance, as they significantly enhance our welfare in various ways. They assist in improving mental health. They provide companionship. They facilitate rescues during natural disasters. They serve as a source of food. This underscores the importance of the bill before us today. It is addressed to establish a professional standards the regulations of veterinary practices and the practice of veterinary medicine, including offenses and penalties. Mr. Vice President, veterinarians play a crucial role as our first and best line of defense against diseases in animals that could threaten public health. They have ethical responsibilities to promote health, alleviate suffering, and act in the best interests of their patients. Administering the proper medicine is essential to ensuring the health of animals, particularly in livestock. This bill seeks to ensure that all veterinarians are registered and that practice of the veterinary medicine is properly regulated. Mr. Vice President, this bill was introduced and debated in the House of Assembly by our Minister, the Honorable Jomo Campbell. On October 2nd, 2024, Minister Campbell stated that the bill lays the foundation to create a comprehensive regulatory regime for the practice of veterinary medicine in the country. As we continue with our goal of food security for the Bahamas, the passing of this bill is a significant step in the right direction. Mr. Vice President, this bill is critical, as it applies not only to the protection of family pets, but also to the livestock of large-scale farmers. Professional standards are essential, and this bill addresses them in Section 6 regarding the Bahamas Veterinary Council. Some of the council's functions include: 1, prescribing standards of professional conduct and establishing a code of ethics for the practice of veterinary medicine. Regulating the use of veterinary medication specified in the 6th schedule of this bill. Prescribing courses for continuing education training for veterinarians. Again, promoting programs to improve the practice of veterinary medicine, investigating the professional conduct or capability of veterinarians. These functions are vital as they protect the public interest by ensuring that veterinarians are competent and uphold professional standards, thereby promoting animal health, food safety, and sustainability. Mr. Vice President, this bill outlines the registration and practice of veterinarians, stipulating that no person shall practice or hold themselves out as qualified to practice as a veterinarian unless registered as a licensed, as the Attorney General said earlier, as licensed under this Act. It is also specified that qualifications for registration, including being a legal resident of the Bahamas, holding a degree in veterinary medicine from an accredited university, and being a member of the Veterinary Medical Association of the Bahamas. Veterinarians play critical roles in environmental protection, research, public health, and food safety. Thus, adhering to all aspects of this bill is of utmost importance. Mr. Vice President, as we continue our quest for food security here in the Bahamas, this government stance is clear. We are ensuring the laws and regulations are in place. And this bill demonstrates our commitment to making our goals a reality. The amendment to the Veterinary Medicine Bill speaks volumes. As we all know, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. This government is focused and will continue to work toward a better Bahamas for all. Mr. Vice President, I am in full support, and I second this bill. I wanted to hold you in the dances. I think Don't put it, me, boy. Mike said we gotta go. I call a while you on that shit.
It has been moved and seconded that as many. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, the world observed the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on Tuesday past, which was December 3rd. And at that time, I publicly renewed my commitment to advocating for the rights and empowerment of people with disabilities in the Bahamas. And my vision extends far beyond providing support. It includes creating real pathways to leadership for persons with disabilities. Mr. Vice President, I would like to encourage Bahamians with disabilities to take their rightful place in public office, to help actively shape policies and contribute to the direction of our nation. Their voices and experiences will enrich our society, making it more inclusive, equitable, and representative. During the recent 149th Interparliamentary Union Assembly, I was moved by the powerful documentary, A Piece of Grain, which tells the story of Turkish MP who, despite facing significant challenges, rose to become a champion for disability rights. And in meeting him, I was equally inspired to meet Swiss MP, Christine Lohr, who continues to break barriers in politics despite being born with no arms and deformed legs. Witnessing their achievements has strengthened my resolve to fight for inclusion and equal opportunities for all in our country. Because if they can, we can. And there are people in our country who are rightly qualified, who may have disabilities, but that has nothing to do with their abilities. So it is time for us to step up and ensure that buildings all across our country, starting with the government buildings, are retrofitted to ensure that they are fully accessible to persons with disabilities. Mr. Chairman, the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is a powerful reminder that women and girls everywhere deserve to live free from violence and fear. And as Senator Major said, we had the Crisis Center here last time, and they did indeed give us white ribbons with their partnership with Rotary, and we also have orange ribbons for these 16 days that run from November, the 25th day, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, through to December, the 10th day, which is Human Rights Day. And during that time, we focus particularly, not that we don't other times, but on the urgent need to address abuse, inequality, and injustice. Too many women and girls still face these challenges, and it's up to all of us to stand up, speak out, and make change happen. And so, regrettably, as Senator Major would have pointed out, Ms. Butler and Adriel did lose their lives during this time. And we have to work hard to ensure that no other woman or girl or child or anyone in this country loses their life in such a heinous way. And there are many events that are going on right now that we could all get involved in. But definitely I look forward to hopefully seeing my fellow senators at the march on Saturday at 4 p.m. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take a few moments it starts, I will definitely give you the information. It starts in South Beach, so Ante is organizing it, and I will definitely send you the information so that you can all have it. And you can wear something orange, a good blend of red and yellow for that day. Orange. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this time out to recognize and pay tribute to and extend sympathy to the family of Telzina Coakley, who died on the 25th day of November. She's an alumna of the College of St. Benedict, actually 1962 graduate. And for many of you who may or may not know, the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University had a campus right here in New Providence called Benedictine University College. And Telzina Coakley championed the establishment of Benedictine University College. And to read directly from the university, and I quote, "Her efforts allowed generations of Bahamian educators and eventually students of all majors to earn college degrees and forever solidified the relationship between the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University with the Bahamas. In that way, she is largely responsible for more than 2,200 College of St. Benedict graduates, and that number would make up nearly 10% of today's St. Ben's alumni base," end quote. And so we definitely want to pay tribute to her and her contribution to our society and education. And I'll also like to note that following the 1992 general election, actually, she was recruited to be one of 2 secretaries to run the Commission of Inquiry based on her previous experience working as co-secretary alongside George Stewart on the Royal Commission during the Hawkesbill Creek Agreement. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to extend sympathy to the Farrington family on the passing of Kristen Roberta Shandia Farrington, who leaves behind 2 young children, Kirsten and Kriston, and was the assistant coach of the Blue Wave Swim Club, and actually another national contribution. She was assistant coach of the recent Goodwill Games and helped bring home the trophy to us. And so I had a chance to get to know her mom, Dolores, over the past years. And this summer, I spent some time in Washington, D.C. with her, with Kirsten, during the Bahamas National Children's Choir trip there. And I would never have thought that at 41, I would have attended a funeral on Saturday past. Mr. Chairman, lastly, I would like to congratulate Ms. Cordell Frazier, who was appointed recently as Director of Public Prosecutions, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting personally, but I have heard only good things about her. And then I would like to also congratulate the current Assistant Commissioner of Police responsible for Grand Bahama and Northern Bahamas, and who I understand is the Commissioner in Waiting, Ms. Shanta Knowles. And I have had a chance to meet and work with her over the past decade, initially through the police summer program back then, her and Stephen Dean, and working at a global bank and volunteering each summer with them at all the different summer camps, and then later on in other capacities as well. And so both of these women, I wish them well in their work, because oftentimes when a man can't get the job done, we have to get a woman or women to do it. So, Mr. Chairman, as I prepare to contribute on the bill, I just want to make it clear to all my colleagues in Senate here today, before they even get antsy, even though this is non-controversial, I just want to make sure everyone knows that I have my glass of water right here to keep me safe. And so you don't have to worry about a thing at all. Mr. Chairman, I raise to contribute on the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024, a bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine and related purposes. And I quote, following the Attorney General using the same quote, and I think it's because Mahatma Gandhi so adequately put it, and I quote, "The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated." And I dare say that Gandhi could easily have expanded that to include the elderly, children, persons with disabilities. Mr. Chairman, I do not support at all the maltreatment of animals, just as I don't support the maltreatment of humans. And it's not good for citizens to have to witness animals being neglected or ill-treated. I'll tell you, my daughter is emotionally impacted when we drive past suffering animals, but we just can't bring them all home. So perhaps I could get directions to your house, because she wants to stop and rescue all of them, but regrettably, I just don't have the space, not in my heart, but in my home, to accommodate all of them. And it also doesn't look good for tourism to see stray dogs in the streets, you know, just visually just roaming around the island. It speaks to our country, a country so beautiful with all its beaches and the sun, the sand, the sea, but we don't care sufficiently for animals. That's what it says. And I'll tell you, in working on Bay Street, but just in general, and driving around, and even in dining out sometimes at like public cultural spaces, I can't tell you how many tourists I've seen taking time to stop, to feed these dogs in particular, to interact with them, okay? And so the reality is that it's very important that we recognize animals and that we treat them with care and respect, because animals are important to humans, but humans are also important to animals. Take 14-year-old Muffin as an example. Her loving owner passed away 6 years ago after having her for 8 years and a very close relationship they had. But even though they lost their mom, Robin Lines and her siblings continued to love on Muffin and care for her, and she's still going strong. But it wasn't such a happy ending for Arius, the pit bull, because when one of my best friend's younger brother, Shavonto Ferguson, died on August 8, just past, Arius, who was with his pet owner for 15 years, spent his days moaning from sunrise to sunset. And this is a dog who was never sick before, just stopped eating and cried all day because he was accustomed to going everywhere with his owner. And so Arius died of a broken heart on September the 1st, less than a month after August the 8th. And so perhaps a veterinary psychologist or behaviorist could have helped. But it all happened so quickly, and people underestimate the understanding of animals and how life can be just as difficult for them as it is for humans. In fact, even losing other animals. I know of 2 dogs who came from the same litter and grew up together, and one died ahead of the other. And for the other one, that was the end, because that other dog stopped eating, stopped interacting, and eventually died as well. And so the loss of a human or fellow animal can be rough, and it could dramatically affect persons, and that is the value of animals to people and to families. And as Senator Young would have pointed out, there are so many reasons why we all need animals, and we should care for them. Animals provide food for us, some of us who aren't vegetarian or vegan. Animals provide companionship. Animals provide emotional support. There are animals who work in hospitals around the world, and I hope that one day our children's ward can see, and even other wards, animals coming in to provide emotional support for patients. Animals help persons with disabilities get around and be able to live as normal a life as possible. Animals provide transportation. Animals help with tourism. And so there's so many things that animals do, and they become a part of us. Okay, and so I want to commend the Attorney General, which is a rarity for me, but on today I have to, Mr. Chairman, go ahead and commend the Attorney General for this long overdue bill, because 1966 is too far ago to have a bill that still addresses it. And needless to say, from my understanding, the veterinarians, the Humane Society, and of course BARC, they're all happy with this bill that we are here today dealing with. And so, Mr. Chairman, we have to deal with some of the issues in society that are just completely unacceptable. For example, people performing surgeries and other procedures without proper accreditation or qualifications, putting animals at risk. And that is why we're here today. Not having antibiotics or other things in place, okay? And just imagine that. For example, in 2018, Whitehead, poor Whitehead, and it wasn't even Whitehead's owner who left her with a caretaker, because Whitehead had a proper vet and went to the vet and everything, okay? But the caretaker decided to take Whitehead to a street vet, who gave Whitehead a C-section without any medication or anything. And the mother and all, well, the mother died, okay? And they spoke out on it. The vets in Grand Bahama, the Humane Society of Grand Bahama, and I'll tell you what Dr. Wildgoose said when she was informed of the awful tragedy. And I quote, "He had given his dog to be in the care of someone while he was away. The dog was pregnant, and the caretaker decided to contact a non-veterinarian to look at the dog, and they deemed the dog to be breached. We understand that some cesarean procedure was performed on the dog by the non-vet, and they removed the puppies. This butchery was done without anesthesia, and ultimately Whitehead possibly bled out and died. There are now allegedly 8 puppies in need of a mother to nurse them, as their mother was butchered and killed by heartless and arrogant people who believe that since dogs are just animals, it's okay to play doctor with animals' lives." Can you imagine that? The reality is, if we hear that story about a mother who in somebody's backyard or bedroom, you know, had somebody take them and do a C-section, we would all be appalled. But regrettably, people are not sufficiently appalled when it's animals we're talking about. But happily, okay, because the reality is that if Whitehead was with a veterinarian, even if it was necessary to euthanize her because of difficulty during the birth, which it would be unlikely, okay, the reality is that it's their responsibilities as vets to do it in a humane way and to minimize the pain and suffering. And so just as the medical profession is regulated by the Medical Council, vets need governance too. And this bill creates a council to oversee the sector. And so with the establishment and incorporation of the Bahamas Veterinary Council, it's charged with approving the qualifications of vets and related professionals, okay? Because I'll tell you, people say that they're qualified and you just don't know. I remember when I was working on my graduate studies at UWI, they're still so ridiculous. Well, they're archaic and very in their system. So we had to hand in like 4 or 5 papers, one for the lecturer, one for somebody else in the department, one for someone in another department, and they still mailed papers away. But I had met people who said they got their masters in a couple months online. And so the reality is that we have people who may say that they're vets, who may bring their qualifications in, but we don't know where they got qualified or if they really are vets. And so now the council will be able to deal with that. We'll be able to determine if this is a real qualified person or if this is just a cereal box situation. So it's important, Mr. Chairman, for the council to be able to deal with this, because we hear about stories all the time of teachers who weren't really teachers, of attorneys who weren't really attorneys. We hear about them around the world all the time. And we hear about them, about vets as well. Because I'll tell you, right here, fake veterinary surgeon jailed, okay? Pregnant dog dies after fake veterinarian performs surgery. Woman's dog dies in care of man who pretended to be a vet, police say. And so these things don't just happen in our country, they happen elsewhere. And that is why regulation is so important. And so I'm happy today that just as medical doctors swear the Hippocratic Oath, that veterinarians will now swear an oath, and that we will be able to minimize some of the malpractice and the fake vets and everything else that may be going on, the street vets in our Commonwealth. And animals are important even in terms of humans and the transmission of infectious diseases. And so many times humans, again, they may think, oh, that's just an animal. What does that have to do with me? But we know that there are so many outbreaks and related sicknesses and illnesses that stem from animals. And this is why it's important to care for our animals. Like I said, my daughter, who's very compassionate at 16 and wants to be a vet, she adopts all the animals in the neighborhood if she can. So we're up to 8 cats right now. And every day, you'd see her standing outside and she'll do a roll call. Honey, Daisy, Ginger, Midnight, Sunshine, Sunny, Luna, Breezy. And they'll all come to her and surround her, and I laugh because, you know, it's just so many cats. Just starting from an outreach to 1 cat, and a cat that we brought home, the cat who's named Breezy, from the Sea Breeze constituency. We brought the cat home in 2021, and we've been caring for the cat ever since. And I'll tell you, cats can be costly at the vet as well, because, you know, what a cat cost the other day when I got the quote for a annual physical with the shots and everything else and grooming, that sounded like more than my doctor charges me. And so the reality, imagine that. And, you know, so they've been, trust me, they shouldn't be having any more kittens at all. They're all straight and sorted. But the reality is that things happen. Yes, they're spayed and neutered. That's the official term. So they are all spayed. Yes, they are all spayed and neutered. We'll use the proper language. Spayed and they're spayed and neutered. And so the reality is that cats, for example, people say cats have 9 lives. And it's true, because sometimes they find themselves in places they shouldn't be. And so the other day I had to take Milo to the vet. Ended up with a broken, you know, a broken paw, and had to stay in for a day or 2 and just get all stitched up and organs fixed back, and Midnight is good to go. That was maybe a year or so ago, but imagine what that cost me. But the reality is that, you know, having animals and having all of those animals and getting them regularly checked up and getting them their shots and everything can be costly. So we have the 8 cats, and we also have 2 dogs that we rescued during the pandemic, Milo and Chase. And they're pot cakes. We didn't get them from Bark. We weren't as privileged, but we did rescue them from somebody who needed someone to care for them. And again, caring for animals is costly, but it's good to have qualified vets who you can go to, who you can take your animals to, and who can care for them. And so I'm happy that this bill today that we're looking at, that we're debating, is going to bring so much more regulation and professional standards to the veterinary medicine practice, medical practice in our country. And when it comes to pets, Mr. Chairman, it's so important to really have what is required by law, and that's enclosed yards, to have shade, to have access to water. And some people have pets and they just don't care for them properly. Or maybe they're not able to afford them as they should, because pets are expensive. I can barely afford them, getting all the food and everything else for them. And some people think that pets are gonna be cute forever, so to speak. So they get them, their puppy, whatever, they love on them. Then as they grow older, sometimes they're often neglected, okay? And they don't maybe love them as much anymore. They keep them tied. We've heard of that today. And so, Mr. Chairman, while the Humane Society does so much, and Bark does so much, and so many others do so much, they're not fully funded or owned by the government. And like we say, volunteer and donations help them. And they do a mammoth task with what they have, but they're often beyond capacity. And so even though they do such a fabulous job, perhaps it's time to look at a government or public veterinarian clinic to make care more accessible for some persons, because one trip to the vet could be way more than minimum wage. And so it's not that people don't care for their pets, but sometimes perhaps they cannot afford it. And so we have to really look at that. And then with this bill in particular, I hope that we will see more specialization in the veterinarian field locally. Because I'll tell you, Bailey did come from Bark, and when my friend got her, because she fell in love with her, working Operation Potcake every day, seeing her in the cage, and you know, she ended up taking Bailey home with her. And when Bailey initially came to her home and into their hearts, she had an issue. And so she needed to go ahead and to get herself fixed by an orthopedic specifically by an orthopedic surgeon, which wasn't available locally. And so this is why it's so important to have specializations available. And so her veterinarian recommended back then that she go to the U.S., which she did do, and she took the dog, and the dog had surgery and ended up with 2 pins and a wire in one of her legs. And just to do this actually, okay, just to take Bailey away, you're talking about either chartering a plane or, you know, getting specific travel arrangements, because nobody wants to take, we don't travel in cargo. So animals are part of the family. And so you have to do special arrangements for air travel. Then you have to find a hotel that's dog friendly. And they, of course, had to go over the day before so that Bailey could be there early the next morning for the surgery. And then Bailey stayed in the hospital, but they had to stay a couple days to wait for the post-operative visit afterwards. And so this is why it's important, as much as possible, to really diversify the specialties that we have available locally, okay? Whether that's specifically dentistry or, you know, pathology, surgery, whatever it is, because just as, you know, medical doctors do, veterinarians can also opt to specialize in so many things, different species or groups of animals. You know, we have the cats, we have the dogs that are popular, but there are also veterinarians who specialize in poultry or wildlife. And there are food animal veterinarians who ensure, of course, the food animals, and also they work to prevent and control disease. And so there are so many specialties, and I look forward now to even seeing the veterinary field grow even more. And Bailey lives in the UK now, and so she is nice and cold these days. But the reality is that she had great care right here from a local vet, but definitely had to travel for a very specialized surgery. And so we also have to really ensure that there's not an implementation gap with this bill, because enforcement is important in general. And so we look forward to the inspectors shutting down illegal clinic operations and really streamlining the local veterinary medicine field. Mr. Chairman, it's also important to be equitable in terms of veterinary practice, because we know that it's so financially burdensome for many family islanders because they have to fly to the capital for so many things. And so on some islands we do have veterinarians, and on others we may not. I know friends who were vacationing years ago on Harbor Island with their beloved Kelly. And once a week, the vet would come to Spanish Wells, and once a week, the vet came to Bryland. But Kelly got sick on a day when the vet wasn't there. And we know that in an emergency, time counts. So, you know, if there's rough weather or there's challenge getting a boat quickly to get over to the mainland of Eleuthera, you're losing time. And so, needless to say, Kelly passed away and is buried under a tree near the sea on Harbor Island. But it's so important, as much as possible, we talked earlier about local government, to really ensure that persons on other islands outside of the capital and outside of the second city and the popular islands also have access to veterinary care. And while the Animal and Control Act addresses the stray dog population, as it was raised earlier, we look forward to animal welfare organizations and veterinarians collaborating to come up with solutions to really deal with the stray and roaming dogs, because it impacts the dogs themselves and it impacts people as well, because there are people who cannot even walk to the bus stop, you know, because of dogs. They have to either walk the long way around or they're chased and things like that. So we need to have the laws enforced. There are dogs who wreak havoc, and it's not because they're bad or angry or malicious, it's because they're often hungry. And so they may turn over people's trash cans at nights, okay? And so the reality is that there are challenges when either we have stray dogs roaming the streets or when owners do not enclose their dogs properly. And even as the AG may have noted, you know, in terms of potcakes, we see certain breeds. And so a vet told me that potcakes are now turning into, I think she called it pancakes, which is a new population, because the pit bulls are, you know, predominantly part of the roaming population of dogs now, but we need to get a handle on. And so the pot cakes are breeding with pit bulls, and we're having these pancakes, they call it. And so, pit cakes. And so we need to get, I must have skipped breakfast, eh? I must have skipped breakfast. And so pit cakes these days. And so we need to really ensure that the animal wardens that they get on the streets and, you know, they issue the citations to persons that own animals and don't have them in enclosed yards. But of course, that means the good Minister Alcides needs to find some more funding for the animal control unit that is currently underfunded. And so we have to ensure that all of the backyard breeding that happens and that's out of control, that people do just as a side hustle, not because they care for animals, okay, but they just want to make some money, and so they crowd them in cages and they don't give them proper nutrition. And so we do have to address all of these challenges. And so I just want to emphasize my full support for the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024 for this legislation. And even though I'm on the other side, and I sit on the opposition bench, I do not oppose simply for the sake of opposing. And so I have to say that this bill does address critical gaps in the regulation and practice of veterinary medicine in the Bahamas, ensuring that both animals and those who care for them are protected. And so again, I want to commend the AG on this rare occasion and his team for getting this one right, as it demonstrates a commitment to strengthening our nation's framework for animal welfare and public health. The well-being of animals, Mr. Chairman, in the Bahamas is not just an issue of compassion, but one of national importance. Animals contribute to our economy, our environment, and the health of our communities. Veterinarians play a critical role in safeguarding this balance, ensuring that our animals remain healthy, productive, and cared for. So let's continue to support organizations like BARC, like the Humane Society, and all the others, and prioritize animal welfare and support the vital work of the veterinarians who dedicate their lives to caring for animals. Because once we work together and we're all more socially conscious and aware, we can build a Bahamas where animals are treated with the respect they deserve and the value they bring to our lives is truly recognized. Because we take our animals for granted, but we can all remember our pets from childhood. I can even remember when my son's turtles, Scotty and Shalinda, passed away after years and years and years of life and growing big and big. And I'll tell you, in terms of having to find a vet, one of my first experiences was, some of you may know that rabbits have cardiac issues pretty often, especially when they get a certain age. And so my son was a scout back then, and it was our turn to bring Henry home for the long holiday weekend. We didn't do anything to Henry, but Henry chose the peace and comfort of our home to breathe his last breath. And I'll tell you, that was a traumatic, very traumatic occasion for us. And we sped to the vet, because imagine now, all the scouts are waiting for Henry to show back up on Monday, and he's in our care. So we sped to the vet to try to get Henry sorted out. And the vet did confirm to get Henry the care that he needed. And so the reality is that, well, you know, I'm trying after the initial senator who we needed a dictionary and thesaurus for, you know, the lexicon, I actually decided that I'll speak in a way that people can understand. But thank you for keeping me, you know, aligned. And so we rushed Henry to the vet, and finding a vet, I'll tell you, that could actually handle Henry. And that's why I talked about specialties, because many of the vets specialize in feline care and canine care. And so we rushed to the vet and did everything we could to save Henry, but we couldn't, and Henry passed away. And we were told that at that age that Henry had pre-existing cardiac issues. But the reality is that when you lose an animal, it's difficult on so many levels, and that is why some local bookstores sell cards, greeting cards, for persons to give in the case of a death of a pet. Because again, we do not in our country often recognize the impact that animals have in our world. But I will remind us all that animals need humans and humans need animals. And so we have to continue to do our best, and this is a big step today in the right direction so that the Bahamas can become a better place. And as we said, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, that our nation, in terms of its greatness and its moral progress, can be judged from today on by the way we treat our animals, and that they will be treated far better, definitely from a legislative perspective, beginning today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your contribution. Hasmini. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin.
Mr. Chairman, honorable senators in this esteemed chamber, it is with great pleasure that I rise today in full support of the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024. This is a transformative piece of legislation that is not only long overdue, but one that promises to elevate the standards of veterinary practice in the Bahamas and in turn improve the welfare of animals across our country. As we all know, the importance of veterinary care extends beyond our household pets. It is central to the care and well-being of our agricultural animals, livestock that play a significant role in the sustenance of our communities, the economy, and indeed our national food security. From cattle and poultry to pigs, our farmers rely heavily on skilled, qualified professionals to ensure their animals are healthy, productive, and disease-free. This bill provides the framework to ensure that those entrusted with such crucial role are properly regulated, qualified, and held to the highest professional standards. The Veterinary Medicine Bill aims to establish a comprehensive regulatory regime for veterinary practice in the Bahamas. It will repeal the outdated Veterinary Surgeons Act 1966, which no longer meets the demands of modern veterinary medicine. The bill provides a new forward-thinking approach that addresses the many challenges of today's veterinary field, while setting the stage for future growth. A key feature of this bill is the establishment of the Bahamas Veterinary Council, which will serve as the central body responsible for regulating the practice of veterinary medicine. The bill also outlines the qualifications for vets and veterinarian paraprofessionals, ensuring that those who are licensed to care for animals are not only well educated, but also fully accountable to the public. It provides clear criteria for registration, licensing, and ongoing professional conduct, ensuring that only qualified professionals can operate in the field. In addition, Mr. Chairman, the bill recognizes the role of paraprofessionals in the vet field. These trained individuals support vets in a variety of essential tasks, and their proper regulation is crucial. The provisions laid out in this bill extend beyond simply regulating practitioners. They are designed to protect the public interests. The Council will have the power to conduct disciplinary inquiries, remove individuals from the register, and impose penalties for unprofessional conduct. For the agricultural sector, this bill will provide much-needed stability and confidence. Farmers and livestock producers will be assured that they are receiving care from competent, regulated professionals. With the Bahamas looking to increase its agricultural production, particularly in livestock farming, this bill is an essential step forward in promoting food security. As we continue to expand and modernize our agricultural industries, the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024 will be crucial in ensuring that veterinary services keep pace with these advancements. Mr. Chairman, speaking of the ambitions of the government in the agricultural sector, it's hard to speak about it without connecting it to the larger picture, the government's economic agenda and the government's cost of living agenda. We all live in this Bahamas, Mr. Chairman. We see the rising cost of everyday items. We can all feel it. That is a fact. You go on the internet, you see Bahamians from the middle class, lower class, upper class, all complaining about prices and the cost of living. There are many things regarded in the cost of living: transportation, fuel, shipping, housing, but one crucially important thing is the cost of the food that we eat in this country. Now many of the things that, sorry?
No, man, go ahead, man.
But yeah, the cost of living. So many of the things that contribute to the high cost of living in this country are not things that we can control. However, there are certain things that we can control, Mr. Chairman. And those are part of that is how we produce our food in the country, how we regulate how we produce the food in the country. And so to that end, Mr. Chairman, I want to speak very briefly about the National Trade Diversification Program, how it assists in the agricultural sector, and the veterinary bill. So the National Trade Diversification Program is a program that this government is launching that seeks to pair local businesses with foreign producers and manufacturers of products. The reality is that we import most of our goods from a single country, the United States. In the United States, we import most of our goods from Florida. And in Florida, we get most of our goods from a small group of companies, which means that there is very little in terms of cost competitiveness. The National Trade Diversification Program will assist us in diversifying our trade outside of the United States. Through our international relationships, we are targeting suppliers and manufacturers in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa to import more cost-competitive products to the country with a view to lower the cost of living. Now, in terms of how we connect this to the local production of goods, our agricultural sector needs inputs of production. One of the things that our farmers complain most about is the high cost of chicken feed, for example. Through our National Trade Diversification Program, we are working with BAIC to import lower and more cost-competitive inputs that agriculturalists need to produce more cost-effective products to put on the shelves of Bahamian stores. And so we are using trade, we are using everything within our means, Mr. Chair, to assist in lowering the cost of living. And this bill goes directly towards that. By having a better regulated vet industry, we can care better for our animals, which means the production of these animals will be more cost effective on the global scale, and we can have better produced local products here that are also cost effective for Bahamians to use. Mr. Chairman, we are also working closely with the National Tripartite Council and Labor in the Bahamas to achieve this. This morning, I spoke to the general meeting of the National Tripartite Council to connect how labor, trade, and the economy all work together in our cost of living strategy. Now, Mr. Chairman, the Bahamas Trade Commission, in collaboration with the Ministry of Economic Affairs under the leadership of Senator Michael Halkitis, is moving quickly, decisively, and effectively working on behalf of the Bahamian people to lower the cost of living. Trade is, however, a dynamic industry. Things change daily, and recently there has been great chatter about two matters in the business and trade ecosystem in the Bahamas. Over the last few weeks, there has been much chatter, and rightfully so, about the e-arrival of Amazon in the Bahamas. The Bahamas Trade Commission is carefully monitoring the effect Amazon will have on trade and commerce in the Bahamas. One thing we can say definitively is that if Amazon's entrance into the market follows its pattern in other markets, it will be nothing short of disruptive. And speaking as a whole, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. We see opportunities for Bahamian businesses and Bahamian consumers. In 2023, Americans spent a staggering $7.2 trillion on e-commerce, with almost half of that figure flowing through one single company, Amazon. The digital behemoth has reshaped how Americans and the world shop, as well as entire industries, supply chains, and consumer expectations. Amazon sales rose 13% in the first quarter of 2024, compared with 8% for all other U.S. e-commerce sites. What we are witnessing is called the Amazon effect. It's a broad term used to describe the profound impact Amazon has had on the industry, inclusive of changes in shipping, logistics, employment, price competitiveness, and product variety. By better understanding the reach of e-commerce and Amazon, the Bahamas Trade Commission and other stakeholders can help companies to plan their business strategy to take advantage of Amazon's significant impact. We encourage and we will work with our partners, the Chamber of Commerce and the Small Business Development Center, to facilitate and assist companies locally to digitize to provide an online shopping option for Bahamian consumers. We will also encourage companies to look into local delivery options so that consumers across the country can benefit from products being delivered directly to or closer to them. These steps will better help Bahamian companies to compete in a market where Amazon exists. So we want our businesses to compete effectively. However, we also want them to take advantage of Amazon. We are encouraging Bahamian businesses to create Amazon storefronts and sell Bahamian products to the world. Over the coming days, we are reaching out to DHL and Amazon experts to help to facilitate the shipping of Bahamian products into the U.S. market through DHL and Amazon. The same way American products can come to the Bahamas through DHL, our view is that Bahamian products can be exported to the U.S. through DHL. We see this as an opportunity. We also think that this is an opportunity for the Bahamian marketplace to innovate. We think Bahamian businesses can become what they call omni-channel distribution centers for U.S. brands through Amazon, which is essentially allowing U.S. companies to ship to Bahamian customers directly from their local store. So for example, many companies on Amazon offer online ordering with in-store pickup. If you shop on Amazon, you will see an option to pick up in a local store near you. This can become a reality here in the Bahamas. Bahamian stores can be the in-store pickup options for products ordered on Amazon. Additionally, we foresee Bahamian small businesses using Amazon to connect to an enormous base of suppliers for goods to sell in the Bahamian market that will now have a short lead time to get here. For consumers, the opportunity is easy, Mr. Chairman. We foresee greater convenience, more choice, and lower prices. In the present global economy, that is a win for the Bahamian consumer. Mr. Chairman, the reality is, e-commerce shows no signs of slowing down, and it will continue to grow and evolve. We want to see this as a challenge that we can turn into opportunities for consumers and businesses. Mr. Chairman, I'll now turn my attention to another matter that has been in constant discussion. During his campaign for President of the United States, President Donald Trump spoke widely about proposed tariffs on a wide range of goods entering the U.S. and on a wide range of jurisdictions. For clarity, these are just plans or proposals uttered in a political campaign. The United States has not changed any of its policies. However, it is incumbent upon us to plan and prepare. In our estimation, the proposed U.S. tariffs would likely have mixed effects in the Bahamas, giving our close trade and economic relationship with the United States. The U.S. is our largest trading partner by far, and a significant portion of our imports come from there, including consumer goods, machinery, and raw materials. The imposition of tariffs, as proposed, could potentially increase the cost of these imports. The Bahamas Trade Commission and the National Trade Facilitation Committee are closely monitoring the discussions in the United States surrounding the proposed changes. In particular, we are preparing for the potential impact on local businesses and consumers. In terms of the impact on Bahamian businesses, we anticipate two things. Firstly, we anticipate potentially higher import costs for U.S. products. Businesses that rely predominantly on U.S. import may face rising operational costs. These businesses will either have to absorb the higher costs or pass them on to consumers through higher prices, which may in turn reduce demand for American products in the Bahamian market. We are actively encouraging these businesses to seek alternative sources for goods so as to keep the general cost of goods low. Secondly, as the changes are implemented, we expect growing pains, Mr. Chair. We anticipate supply chain disruptions. U.S. tariffs could disrupt supply chains, especially in industries in the Bahamas that rely on specific products or raw materials from the U.S. For example, the construction sector, which often imports building materials from the U.S., could see delays or higher costs if they do not diversify import sources. We encourage sectors that are vulnerable to disruptions to again begin searching for alternative sources of inputs through programs like the National Trade Diversification Program. In anticipation of these possible changes, the Trade Commission is amping up our trade diversification campaign. We will continue to strengthen our trade relationships across the globe, particularly focusing on Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. We think countries in these regions are best positioned to provide alternative sources of goods that will be able to compete in this market on price and on quality. We've had great success in this endeavor thus far, and on the foundation of that success and of our international trade engagements, 2 months ago, we launched the Trade Diversification Program and have already held multiple town hall meetings to enlist businesses to join the program. Businesses are already in the program, and they have already begun ordering products from abroad. In fact, we expect a shipment of products from Ghana to arrive in the country before the end of the year. So we will continue our town halls and amp up the campaign to engage the private sector in the program. Mr. Chairman, as you would know, we are also now working very closely with BAIC to support an increase in local production of goods. The Trade Commission is assisting in sourcing low-cost inputs of production across the agricultural and fishing sectors. The idea is that if we can make production in the Bahamas more cost competitive, then local production can be one tool in our toolkit to reduce dependency on U.S. imports. So all in all, while the planned U.S. tariffs pose some challenges for the Bahamas, particularly in terms of higher import costs, we also offer opportunities for local businesses to innovate, diversify, and potentially expand their market reach. By implementing strategic policies, fostering trade partnerships, and encouraging domestic production, the Bahamas can mitigate the negative effects while positioning itself to benefit from emerging opportunities. Now, Mr. Chairman, turning back precisely to the bill before us, I hope you now see how important and strategic the passing of this bill is in our larger economic agenda. To that end, the bill takes into account the evolving nature of the veterinary care. It recognizes the need for continuous professional development, the introduction of new technologies, and the importance of international collaboration. On a personal level, Mr. Chair, I am the proud owner of 2 English bulldogs, who I take to the vet regularly. I wholeheartedly believe that we are entrusted to care for our furry friends, and that includes looking after their health and welfare. So, I thank the vets at Happy Pets who assist me in ensuring that my furry ones are well taken care of. So in this vote today, I vote for country, but I also vote for my dogs, Blue and Beasley. So, Blue and Beasley. So, in conclusion, Mr. Chair, the Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024 is an essential piece of legislation that will protect animal welfare, support the agricultural community, and enhance the overall quality of veterinary care in our country and contribute to a stronger, more robust economy. I wholeheartedly support this bill and urge my colleagues in these chambers to do the same. Let us show our commitment to the well-being of animals, to the prosperity of our farmers, and to the prosperity of our economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognize Senator the Honorable.
You need this afterwards?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of the colleagues' support for this Veterinary Medicine Bill 2024 and the advocacy and acceptance of the animal welfare initiatives that go on in the country and the volunteerism that occurs. I want to let all my colleagues around the table know that they should join the Cool Boys Club and Cool Boys and Girls Club, because there's at least 3 members around this table who have adopted animals through Bark. And 2 of them didn't speak, and that's okay. I thought, you know, that's okay. But I encourage my colleagues, if you are yearning for a pot cake, a pit cake, a shepherd cake, a kitten, there are many animals looking for a loving home. And I'm sure each and every one of you around here will be great, great parents. Even Mr. Chair in the seat right now, who has 2 bulldogs, he needs a pot cake to go along with them. And I can help him with that. I can help him with that. So, in all seriousness, we are always looking for good homes for our animals that we rescue. We rescue all of our animals and we provide them with good homes. And that's what we want to do. With that, Mr. Chair, I move for the second reading of a bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine, and related purposes.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine, and related purposes. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is carried. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine, and related purposes.
For the second reading of bills.
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Vice President, I move that the Senate do resolve itself into a Committee of the Whole with Senator Darren Pickstock in the chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with Senator the Honorable Darren Pickstock in the chair. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose will say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Senate will now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with Senator Darren Pickstock and as chairman of the Committee of the Whole in the chair.
Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act, move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
It has been.
Second.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The long title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title be agreed. As many as are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 to 42 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 to 42 be agreed. As many as are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Clauses 2 to 42 is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that clause 43 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for an amendment to Section 43. Subsection 1 is amended by the deletion of subsection 1 and the substitution of the following. Quote, an election of councillors of a district specified in the third schedule pursuant to Section 18.8 and town committee members pursuant to Section 9(3) shall be held on the 23rd day of January 2025, the third Wednesday of June 2027, and thereafter on the third Wednesday in the month of June every 3 years.
Second.
It has been moved. It has been moved and seconded that that section 43 of the bill be amended. Be agreed as amended. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Section 43 of the bill is agreed as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move now that clauses 44 to 98 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 44 through 98 of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. Clauses 44 through 98 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety, inclusive of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth schedules.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to a bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine and related purposes, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The long title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that clauses 2 through 48 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 48 of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. Clauses 2 through 48 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety, inclusive of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth schedules.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that the Vice President do now take the chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Vice President do now take the chair. As many as are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. The Vice President will now take the chair. Yes, sir. Vice President, I beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has examined the two bills and made amendments to Section 43 of the Local Government Bill 2024. All right, and no amendments made to the veterinary bill. Okay.
Honorable Senators, Senator Darren Pickstock and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined both bills, having made an amendment to Section 43 of the Local Government Bill. Third reading and passing of bills.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to repeal and replace the Local Government Act.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof. Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof to be declared to be the Local Government Act 2024. For the third reading of bills.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to make provision for the registration and licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine, and related purposes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to make provision for the registration and the licensing of veterinarians, the registration of veterinary paraprofessionals, the regulation of the practice of veterinary medicine and related purposes.
Ordered that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Veterinary Medicine Act 2024. For the third reading of bills.
There are none, Mr. Vice President.
Adjournment.
Some more things
on the agenda. There was nothing else on the agenda, but consideration of House amendments, resolutions, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings.
I would like to renew all notices in the name of the government, Mr. Vice President.
Orders for clerk.
Suspend you for like 7
Adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice President, I move that the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now adjourn. As many are in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is agreed. The Senate stands adjourned sine die.